Hello, everyone. This is going to be the first video for social influence. It may well be the first video you've actually seen as a first year just starting out on your A-level journey, or maybe you're a second year coming back to revisit these slides for your mock or your exam because it's been ages since you've done them. What I'm going to be going through today is explanations for conformity and Asch's study. So that whole big first bullet point. A couple of questions on the start, which obviously are going to be relatively basic, given that first years haven't really looked at that much. But this is pretty much what we're going to be looking at over the next 6 weeks if you're a first year. 6 weeks, roughly speaking, 6 bullet points in social influence. We look at conformity, we look at obedience, we look at how to resist social influence, so on and so forth. So I'm just going to... Oh, crap. I've just drawn on that. Not what I wanted. No. Anyway, so that is pretty much what we are going to be doing today. Okay, that was not supposed to happen either. So let's make a start before I ruin anything else. Okay, no, you're not. Oh my God, stop it. There we go. Thank you. There we go, finally. Let's have a look. So all of these videos are on YouTube and they should be on the slides as well. This is what we are looking at: internalization, identification, and compliance. So you need to know the 3 types of conformity. You need to know the explanations of conformity as well. You also do kind of need to know the difference between the two. So a type of conformity is something you see. You see someone internalize, you see someone identify. Explanations are more about why people are conforming. And you also need to know the factors that affect the variables that affect conformity as well. So I'm just going to jump straight in, right? First thing we need to do is we need to actually identify what is meant by conformity. People get conformity mixed up with obedience. Obedience is when there's an authority figure, someone who is above you in the food chain. Conformity is simply given into social groups or group pressure, of which they're not deemed to be above you. So conformity is more about giving into peers, people on your level, whereas obedience is more about giving into people who are above you in the social hierarchy. So that is essentially what conformity is. It could be involved being persuaded to go along with an activity by friends when you don't want to. It could be persuaded to listen to music that your friends like and you don't want. It could also be them actually persuading you. So we'll come on to this, right? That's an important bit just there, actually. What we're talking about is known as majority influence, i.e., you are influenced by the bigger majority in this case. We look at majority influence and we look at minority influence. Majority influence is when you give in because the bigger group has influenced you to do so. So, yeah, right. So, social psychology, I'm not really too bothered about this. You can have a look at this in your own time, pause the video perhaps. But essentially what it is, it's just looking at how humans behave in a social dynamic. In your friendship group, I'm permanently fascinated, by the way, by the dynamics of a friendship group. You usually have a leader, for example. You usually have an organizer. Often they are the same person. You usually have people that, you have non-conformists in the group. So just the dynamic of a group constantly fascinated me. That's kind of what we're looking at just here. So here are some teenage conformity examples that are pretty typical. Adapting a taste in music. Let me ask you, the music you listen to with your friends, do you actually like it? Do you like it, or are you just doing it to go along with the group? Publicly, you say you like it, but privately you don't. Losing virginity before you are ready, another classic example. Committing crime, drinking alcohol, taking drugs, joining rebellions, smoking cigarettes, and wearing the latest trends. Firstly, how much of those do you do? Secondly, how much of those that you do you actually want to, right? The point we're going to be talking about here is that teenagers in particular give in to conformity quite a lot. So first thing we need to look at, and this is probably going to be in your workbook. Now, the dynamic of these videos is that sometimes I try to go along with the workbook, but the workbook adapts and so do my slides. So sometimes I will be talking about things that aren't in your workbook. If I'm talking about it, still write it down. Right? Absolutely, 100%. If I'm talking about it, still write it down. First thing I want to talk about are the types of conformity, of which you need to know all three for the exam. And you need to know the level, the depth to which they are kind of permanent conformity behavior. So on one hand, we've got compliance. Now, again, write this down, but compliance is a low-level form of conformity. It's superficial, it's very temporary, not permanent, and it's essentially where individuals publicly go along with the majority view, but privately disagree with it, right? And it's linked to a need to be accepted. So I used to live with three lads about 10 years ago at the time of filming, and lads. And it was when I was training to be a teacher, right? I was doing my PGCE, which is a really tough year, by the way, for those of you who want to be a teacher, or it can be a really tough year sometimes. And they were all non-teachers. They all had jobs that, they were nights sometimes. They didn't really have to go in. They were, they weren't professional jobs. Every Wednesday, without fail, about 10 p.m., I would hear the of them getting ready to go on a night out. And I knew as soon as that was happening, they were going to bang on my door within 15 minutes and try get me to go out. And I'd always be like, no, I can't. And they'd be like, oh, come on, don't be a dick, just come out kind of thing. And in the end I go, oh, yeah, fine. Now that's compliance. Why have I done that? I'm publicly going along with going out, but privately I don't want to. Why am I doing that? Because I don't want to be the guy that's not fun. Right? Nobody does. Nobody wants to be the boring person. I don't want to be the guy that, I get a reputation for being boring, that I like, and then they stop asking me, and then I get ostracized or kicked out of the group, even though I live with them, and they just stop asking me because I don't want to be that guy. So it's linked to a need to be accepted, right? And I'd be on the dance floor at like 1 p.m. thinking, I've got a lesson in 7 hours. I've got a lesson in 6 hours. I've got a lesson in 5 hours. And then, so it was a nightmare, basically. The next one is identification, and this is a deeper level of conformity. So individuals adopt the behavior of the group because we value the group and group membership, right? So you do not necessarily agree with everything the group stands for. And Lazar says it's a moderate type of conformity, but you'll only do the behavior for as long as you are in the group. A good example of this is my girlfriend was in the army for 11 years. We talk about this quite often. My girlfriend was in the army for 11 years. The army has a very laddie culture, right? The military in general does. And she admits that when she was in the army, she would go out getting absolutely hammered with the lads. She'd act in a way that wasn't her, basically. And when her army mates come down, she falls into that habit again as well. She identifies with the group. Now, that's not who she is as a person, but because she wants to be accepted within this kind of group membership, she changes her behavior. Now, that's quite similar to compliance, but it's a deeper level. Your group membership, like she was in the army for 11 years, and you haven't been in a friendship group for 11 years. So it's ever so slightly different, but it's more because we value being a member of that group. We value that group. We want to be in the army kind of thing. We want to keep that job. And the last one is basically internalization. Now, the best way you can probably phrase this is when somebody genuinely persuades you of a way to think. So not only do you publicly change your attitudes, but you privately change them as well. Let's say I sacked off the current girlfriend, and I got with someone else who is maybe very religious, for example. And let's just say I'm not religious, right? But she takes me to church, and I go along, and I don't know, I get it. I go there, and I listen to the messages, and I think this is a great community. This is a great, there's great unity in this group, and she genuinely convinces me to believe the ways of her religion. That would be internalization. It's a permanent change. It's also known as, and write this down, true conformity. True conformity. So those are your types of conformity. We then need to go into why these happen. So there's two explanations you need to know. Now, the only issue I have is students get confused between the types of conformity and the explanations of conformity. You're going to have to revise and make this clear in your revision materials. So these are the two. You've got. I've got a question for you first. Actually, would you rather be correct in an argument, or would you rather just fit in with the group and avoid disapproval? I will ask you this question in class if I haven't done so already. So the two explanations are: the first one is informational social influence. Deutsch and Gerard in 55 came up with these. So informational social influence is when we change our behavior to be right about something. If I'm writing, for example, if I get a mini whiteboard, this isn't mini whiteboard, this is actually paper, but if I get a mini whiteboard and like my teachers ask me a question and I don't know the answer, what I will do is, but I deem the person next to me to be more intelligent. What I will do is I will just look across at their whiteboard, see what they've written, and then I would write it on my whiteboard as well. I'm changing my behavior because I want to be right, and I deem the person next to me to be superior, better informed, more knowledgeable than I am, and then I copy their behavior. And we, as it says there, we use their lead as a guide for our own behaviors. The only other thing I would write down here is ISI is done. We copy people who we believe to be right for cognitive reasons, not emotional reasons. We copy them for cognitive reasons because we want to be right. We think they are right. And cognitive is about thinking. We think they are right. The other one is normative social influence, and this is easier to wrap your head around, I think. We change our behavior to avoid punishment. Oh, one more thing I do want to say, actually. Informational social influence, and this is quite important. Informational social influence is often linked to internalization. So, we don't temporarily think they're right. We permanently think they're right. So you need to be able to link ISI with internalization. Another one is normative social influence, and this is where you are going to change your behavior to avoid punishment or disapproval from the group. This is why I gave in to Sirhan, Josh, and James when they came knocking at my door on those Wednesdays at 10 o'clock, because I didn't want disapproval. Right? I didn't want to be punished in the group. I didn't want to gain a reputation. And so I did this because of emotional reasons, right? Now, that one's quite easy. That one is quite easy. I didn't copy the lads and go out because I thought they were right. I thought that was the right thing to do. I copied them because I didn't want disapproval. So generally speaking, we change our behavior for one of these two reasons. So here is a question just here. This is an essay question, 16 marker. You're not going to get worse than 16 markers. This is a stem from it. Polly always checks what her friends are going to wear before she gets ready to go out because she does not like to be the odd one out. That's clearly normative social influence, whereas Jed watches his colleagues carefully when he starts a new job so he can work out where to put his things and how long to take for lunch. That is clearly informational social influence. He is looking to people who he deems to have more knowledge in this area. They've worked there for longer, and he's going to copy them. It's always quite amusing to watch new people do this when they start, by the way. It's pretty textbook. Okay, so I've covered this. That's fine. I've covered this as well. Informational social influence is often linked to internalization, and the changes are both genuine, private, and public. So here's the other thing you need to do as well. I've just gone through very briefly two theories: normative social influence, informational social influence. It is not enough at A level for you to just know those theories. You have to be able to evaluate it as well. And what we mean by evaluations is assess the theory for its strengths and weaknesses. So on one hand, the normative social influence can explain behavior in unambiguous situations. And for example, Asch, and we'll go on to that in a second. And Asch found that normative social influence occurred across several variations of his study. Now, these are not the greatest evaluations ever. Another one that I would put is it does not consider dispositional factors. Now, what we mean by dispositional factors is something to do with the person. Both of these theories say that you conform because of the situation. You conform because of the situation you have found yourself in, and that is not actually anything to do with the person. There's no personality trait, there's no brain region or anything like that. These theories are too focused on the situational explanations. The other strengths are actually, weaknesses are actually quite similar for normative and informational. I'm hoping in the coming weeks and months I'm going to sit down and properly thrash out better evaluations, but these are probably the best ones to work with at the minute. One more one you probably want to think about actually is that what's the strength of these theories? They are both backed up by research. That's a huge strength of a theory. If you have a theory that's not backed up by research, it's a crap theory, right? And it's probably unscientific. It's probably not worth paying attention to. But both of these are backed up by Asch. Now, a couple of points here. I don't want to go into this too much detail. I probably will do this in class quite a bit. But when it comes to your evaluations, these are known as AO3. So when I'm talking about AO3, which I talk about AO3 a lot, by the way. Oh, you're going to get sick of AO3. What AO is assessment objective, or I think that's what it is off the top of my head. But AO3 is essentially your evaluations. Right, is your assess the strengths and weaknesses of a theory or a piece of research, or a concept or something. This is how. Oh god, I'm tired. It's 10 o'clock. This is how you will structure your whole point. So you got a point, which is short and sharp. You then have a bit of evidence. You then elaborate. I don't know why. I have no idea why that says evaluation. I'm going to need to change that right now, because otherwise it's going to annoy me. And then you will link back at the end as well. So you've done this before in schools, most of you. This is called a peel. So, and again, I'm going to use that term quite a lot as well, peel. I'm going to show you a model peel in a second when this loads. But what you are looking at here is this. This is one peel. You can see on the left-hand side, it's got point, evidence, elaboration, link back. And that is a full peel. This is probably the biggest difference between GCSE and A-level, is the depth to which you actually need to know this content. There are a lot of screencasts on this called skills screencasts, so I don't want to spend too long on this, but that would be how to properly peel. Now, I do want to go into Asch. All right, I'm not going to spend too long on this because this is relatively straightforward. Asch is named in the specification that I gave you at the start of the year. You need to know his research from front to back, because you could and probably will get asked a question specifically on Asch, the aim, the procedure, the findings, the method, the conclusions, so on and so forth, the results. So Solomon Asch is named on the spec, as I say. And what he did is this. He showed people 18 line graphs like this. They were all different, right? And basically what you had to do is you had to match what the X line length was to either A, B, or C. And in this answer, the answer is clearly B, right? The B is the same length as X, fine. But what he would do is he would put people in a group of 7 to 9 round a table, all participants. The one at the end was the only real participant. Everyone else was in was in on the study. They were called Confederates. They were in on the study. So, done in the 50s, I'm going to go through this. There was 123 real participants, who were told that the task was a task of visual perception, but that was a lie. It was not a task of visual perception, how you are perceiving information in front of you. It was a task of conformity, so Asch lied to his participants. Participants had to call out in turn what was the line that matched. And basically, Asch rigged it so that a lot of the participants would give purposely false answers. And as you're going round, clearly the answer is B here. Clearly the answer is B. Asch shows you this. First person goes, and he's Confederate. A. And it adds the pressure on you. You want to be a part of the group to go, A, right. That is essentially what Asch looked at. The results are pretty staggering, to be fair. Pretty staggering. So as I say, yeah, a real participant was seated in a row among Confederates. They were seated penultimately, so not last, but the one before the last. And he was the 6th of 7 people, or the 7th of 8 people, or the 8th of 9 people, basically. He varied it. And the goal of the study was to examine perpetual judgments. Fine, I've kind of said that. And this is essentially a picture. That is Asch on the right-hand side. The real participant here, sorry, it's been a bit funny, is this guy right here. This guy is not a participant. They're posing as participants. They're in on the study. This guy is not a participant. This guy is not an actual participant. This guy, this, and this guy. And look, all these people have gone A, and they're just going around, and it gets to this guy, and he's got all this pressure on him. He's thinking, maybe they can see something I can't, or maybe they're right, or maybe he's thinking, well, I don't want to say B, I don't want to be the only one. So then eventually, he then gives in and says A, and then this guy will also say A as well. So it's pretty clever. It's pretty clever the way Asch did it. So in 12 of the 18 studies, of trials, I should say. Remember, Asch went round this group 18 times with 18 different line graphs. In 12 of the 18, the Confederates got the wrong answer. Okay, these were known as critical trials, by the way. Critical trials, and absolutely write this down. Critical trials were the trials in which the Confederates purposely gave the wrong answer. The non-critical trials, I'll come to in a second. But of those 12 trials, 6 of the trials they gave the longer line, and 6 of the trials they gave the shorter line. And then the other six trials, by the way, they gave the correct answer. So they would give the correct answer every now and again. Now think why. I think this is pretty clever psychology. If the participants get every answer wrong, the actual participant, is probably going to cotton on to the fact that he is part of an experiment here and that everyone around him is in on the experiment. So what they just do is they just throw him a right answer every now and again, which is, I think, pretty clever. So the results are slightly varied, depends where you look, but the overall conformity rate was 37%. Now, please do not say that 37% conform. That's not what I'm saying here. The overall conformity rate. So of the 4,200 times that they went round a table, it was about 37% of the time somebody conformed. You need to know these stats. So there were huge individual differences. Some people did not conform even once. They gave the right answer every single time, and they were looking around the table like, you lot are idiots, mate. You lot are idiots. You lot are plebs. How can you not see that? It's clearly B, for example. So some people never conformed. 5%, 1 in 20 conformed on every single trial. They gave in at every single time. They conformed every single time. That is 1 in 20. That's pretty bad. Whereas 25% of people remain completely independent and they did not conform once. They did not conform once. So you do need to know these stats. Oh, trust me, A-level psychology, you're going to need to know a lot of stats. So can you make sure you've got these down, please? But psychology wants to know why. Why did these people behave this ways? And Asch provided a range of explanations. And partly they were ISI and NSI. So some thought that their perceptions may have been inaccurate and they doubted their eyes. They actually doubted their vision. That, and please write this down, is informational social influence. You need to link that to informational social influence. They think everyone else is right. They think their eyes are wrong. So they are given in because of cognitive reasons. Other people knew the rest of the group were wrong. A lot of people knew they were giving the wrong answer, but they didn't want to stand out. And this is normative social influence, which, again, you do need to know as well. Maybe they felt a little bit self-conscious. As well as evaluating the theories, you do also need to evaluate Asch. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail on this video because I'm going to do it in class, and plus it's actually relatively easy. But my advice would be to tackle the sample. Right, the sample is American, therefore it's ethnocentric. The sample is quite small, therefore it's not representative. The sample is all men, for example, therefore it's androcentric and doesn't take into account women and cannot be generalized to women who may conform at a higher or lower rate and therefore is not applicable. So you do need to do it. There's a couple here. I do just want to pay attention. I do want you to pay attention to the bottom one. Asch's study was done in a particular historical and cultural context. What's wrong with these slides? 1950s America. Do we conform as much as they used to? Probably not. Therefore, it doesn't apply to today's society. But more on that later on. And obviously, it is a bit unethical as well. So that is everything for the first slide, right? I have gone through Asch particularly quickly, but I hope you found that useful. Make sure you filled in your workbooks and made your revision materials now, please. I certainly don't want you waiting till February in your second year. So make your revision materials and I will go through that in class. Hope this is useful. Peace out.